Ever since Mario Kart World was shown off, the mode I've been the most interested in has been free roam. Free roam is easily the most grand, unique, and ambitious project that this game has to offer. And now that I've gotten the chance to finally sink quite a few hours into this game and really become familiar with what it offers, I have a ton of thoughts about this mode specifically. You might remember my video talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly of Mario Kart World, where I discussed my initial impressions of the game, including my initial thoughts on free roam. However, today I wanted to take some time to focus completely on free roam itself, because after having a legitimate chance to play a lot of this mode, I have even more conflicting thoughts about it. In fact, I still think this is the most fascinating thing Mario Kart World has to offer, maybe even across the Mario Kart series as a whole. However, with as much fun as I've been having exploring Mario Kart World's massive overworld, I must admit that the problems this mode has have become even more apparent. In fact, some of this mode's flaws are simply so obviously stupid that it genuinely makes me question how they were even left in the game to begin with. So on top of discussing how free roam works and how it doesn't, I'll also be going over some updates that I think this mode seriously needs in order for it to be practically perfect, which frankly it deserves to be. So let's jump into it, starting off with why I love free roam so much. I think what makes free roam so special, on top of it just being a massive project in and of itself, is just the fact that it works so well for Mario Kart World specifically. Everything this game has to offer, from the tracks to the intermissions to the music, it all comes together in this mode, and that's very intentional when you think about it. Without free roam, Mario Kart World is kind of just Mario Kart 9. Before this game even had a name, I kind of just assumed that its main gimmick was going to be 24 racers. That felt like a great way to showcase the power of the Switch 2 with so many characters on screen at once. Sure, we saw the potential for free roam with a couple of paths that left the track itself, but the idea that every single track could be combined into one giant overworld that you're free to explore at will, that's something that I don't really think anyone could have expected. It's also something that I never knew Mario Kart needed. Mario Kart World's freedom of exploration is so fun. They've done an amazing job fleshing out this map with a ton of different paths to travel through. Even on the individual tracks, you really can get a sense of just how big they actually are, and everything is perfectly complemented by Mario Kart World's new mechanics. World, on top of having this sort of large-scale 3D space to travel around, often feels like a platformer with how innovative its controls are. I'm not just driving around playing this game, I'm going up rails, flying off moving trucks, getting launched out of cannons, and oh yeah, practically every single wall in this game can be driven on now. You can get launched up with the feather item, or even just charge up your own little mini jump whenever you want. Leading up to launch, I was watching every piece of Mario Kart World content I could get my hands on, and yet I was still shocked by how many things you can do in this game. And free roam itself is essentially the perfect showcase of those things. The game doesn't just allow you to go wherever you want, it encourages it. There have been so many times where I've been playing this game and been like, I wonder if I can do that. And more often than not, you can. I just love how detailed this game is mechanically. For instance, in Dry Bones Burnout, there's all sorts of these shallow lava sections, and if you drive on these sections, you'll spin out before Lakitu picks you up. However, you can actually drive over them like a normal off-road shortcut with a simple mushroom boost, which is absolutely sick. On top of that, free roam's replayability is largely enhanced by the fact that it's the best way to practice racing on Mario Kart World's courses. Being able to fast travel to any track, find any shortcut you want to practice, and then rewind at will, this is so huge for a Mario Kart game, especially one as precise and complex as Mario Kart World. I was skeptical of this rewind feature at first, but at this point, I've used it so much that it just feels like second nature. And believe me, this game does need the rewind feature. Mario Kart World is so mechanically challenging that it's very easy to make mistakes. In the trailers, it was hard to kind of understand how rail tricking and wall riding would be useful in actual gameplay, and when I started playing Mario Kart World, I realized that the skill gap in this game is absolutely ridiculous. However, I've gone from regularly smashing my face into walls, and now I'm doing cool stuff like this. I owe a lot of my familiarity with this game's mechanics to free roam specifically. Not only does it give you the space to mess around with all these new abilities, it very much encourages it. A lot of the P-Switch missions in this game are downright diabolical if you haven't mastered the different mechanics, and I welcome this sort of challenge because on top of forcing you to learn, it is just fun to drive around in free roam, which obviously is like the highest praise I can give any mode in any game. It's just fun, that's what counts. But as cool and fun as these little collectibles and P-Switch missions are, they're also the bane of free roam's existence. If you couldn't tell, we've now entered the Shortcomings part of this video, and as great of a job as free roam does, bringing the entirety of Mario Kart World World together, ironically, its main problem is that there's nothing really bringing free roam together. Often, these collectibles feel completely pointless, and I think the reason for that is because, well, they are pointless. With these collectibles, you don't really get anything at all. Aside from stickers, nothing in free roam rewards you in the slightest. Hell, light spoilers ahead, but if you collect every single P-switch in this game, which is, by the way, 394 individual P-switch missions, you get nothing as an extra reward. That is completely mind-boggling. With all the content free roam offers, how did it fail to have one of the most necessary components, a sense of purpose? The meaninglessness of these missions can easily make the hours you can sink into this mode kind of feel like a waste of time. And I say this as someone who genuinely wants to, and definitely will, eventually 100% free roam. Like, even without specific rewards attached to these collectibles and challenges, I still appreciate that they were put into the game, and they're fun to do, so I still want to complete them. Not having an actual reward for finding these collectibles, though, really hangs over and sours the entire experience. This also brings us to an even more inexcusable problem. This game has perhaps the worst tracking out of any collectathon or just any open world game whatsoever. It seriously feels like they don't even want you to attempt to 100% this mode. There are 3 collectibles in this game: P-switches, peach medallions, and question mark panels. The only information this game gives you on these items is how many you have. If you go to the map and hover over any track, it will tell you how many question mark panels you have left, but you get no other information about the other 2 collectibles, despite there being hundreds of them spread across a giant world map. Again, there are 394 P-switches alone. It boggles my mind that they took the time to build this ginormous, beautifully designed Mario Kart game with an open world, essentially campaign, yet didn't take a much smaller amount of time to build a detailed world map. You know who did build a detailed world map for Mario Kart World? The internet, in a week. So yeah, that is definitely the most baffling thing about free roam, because it just seems so obvious to include. But on top of there not being enough structure with these collectibles, I also just wish there was more structure in this mode overall. While everything is interconnected, that's merely physically, and to be honest, this feels like the type of mode that could greatly benefit from any sort of story, which again, would make you feel like what you're doing actually has some sense of purpose. I think a great comparison is Nintendo's most iconic open world adventure they've ever made, Breath of the Wild. In that game, sure, you can do whatever you want and walk around aimlessly. However, on top of all the bite-sized challenges and collectibles spread throughout the massive open world, there is also a big overlying story, something to keep you engaged. You have your main objective, side quests, and cutscenes, and all of those things make you feel more connected to the story. In Mario Kart World's free roam, there is nothing like that at all. And here's the thing, it's Mario Kart. I don't need this to be a grand adventure akin to Breath of the Wild, or even Super Mario Odyssey. But what I would like is, again, literally anything to make this mode feel more meaningful than it's just fun and you can drive around and explore. Give us NPCs to talk to or something. I was kind of surprised that this new Kamek's magic ball item is the only way to unlock the new characters, especially when you can find a ton of these characters in the world on free roam. To be honest, when we saw so many of the new characters were NPC-esque racers, I kind of assumed you would unlock them through free roam, but again, they're only tied to this one item, which is essentially pure luck. Characters like Nabbit and Charge and Chuck can randomly spawn in the overworld too, which is the closest thing free roam ever gets to some sort of quest. However, all you have to do is either catch Nabbit or hit Charge and Chuck with a shell, and then they disappear and give you 5 coins as a reward. Again, these emergent gameplay moments would be a lot cooler and actually make me want to interact with them if there was just some sort of reward beyond 5 coins, which is ridiculous. Another thing I'm kind of surprised is missing is any type of boss fight. A lot of people expected this. People have been begging for this sort of thing for so long. If we're being honest, free roam is kind of a spiritual successor to Mario Kart DS's mission mode. That mode had several different bosses you could fight in there. However, this concept, despite being so loved, has been missing for so long. It's been well over a decade, and free roam was the perfect opportunity to bring boss fights back. Like, when I started playing free roam, I would just do things like drive up to a whirlpool and think, wow, maybe there's a gooper blooper hiding here. But nope, this feels like a huge waste of potential. And speaking of potential, this is another thing I brought up during my good, bad, and ugly video, but seriously, where the hell is Rainbow Road? You would think that with Rainbow Road being the most iconic track in every single Mario Kart game, that Nintendo would make an effort to include it in the mode dedicated to traveling across Mario Kart tracks. However, Nintendo decided to add every single track into free roam except for like the most important one, Rainbow Road. Like, this would have been the perfect thing to have as an unlockable in this mode. It could have made the entire experience feel way more rewarding, and to be honest, the absence of Rainbow Road is such a massive letdown. And frankly, I would say it's unforgivable. I genuinely would not be surprised if Rainbow Road was initially planned to be included in free roam. The second lap of Rainbow Road features a massive open area that definitely could house unique P-switch challenges and missions. Rainbow Road itself was probably originally planned to have 6 P-switch missions in it, which would then take the P-switch total from 394 all the way up to a nice round 400. That's my conspiracy theory at least, because otherwise it makes no sense. This really should be explorable in free roam. Alright, so now that we've gone over free roam's main problems, let's talk about how Nintendo can fix them. I know, it might sound like I hate this mode with how many problems I have with it, but here's the thing. Free roam is genuinely such a great game mode. Connecting every track with extra areas to explore, giving you a bunch of cool moves and tricks to try out, and even having fun missions and collectibles. Its execution is essentially perfect. But that's why these seemingly smaller problems make such a huge difference, and frankly, for this mode to be as great as it could be, it does not need any big fundamental changes. Leave the core concepts, the gameplay, and the challenges, but please make them feel more meaningful. And here's my suggestion for that. I think in each area of the map, you should be able to reach a point, like maybe where you found every question mark panel, where it triggers some sort of boss fight. It's essentially just one big mission, and the boss could be based off what track you're on. So like a giant Pokey for Desert Hills, Petey Piranha for Dandelion Depths, or even just the giant mechanical Donkey Kong that's already in the game for DK Spaceport. Maybe beating those bosses allows you to unlock a boss switch that lets you replay them, but also for new bosses, you unlock a piece of the Rainbow Fragment. Well, what's the Rainbow Fragment? Ever since Mario Kart World's initial reveal, fans have noticed this giant pillar on a mountain titled Home of the Rainbow Fragment. My personal theory was that this would be tied to Rainbow Road. However, we now know it's not tied to anything. But what if it was? Maybe if you unlocked every single Rainbow Fragment, they would form together and open up a new path to Rainbow Road, which would host a few missions and collectibles of its own and one final boss fight. Like maybe the Dino Piranha from Super Mario Galaxy. I feel like something like this would be the perfect way to actually make all of free roam feel really tied together. I don't know if they would even add this because frankly it seems like something that would make way more sense to be in the game at launch, but if they're willing to update free roam, this just feels like a no-brainer in my opinion, especially considering updating free roam does not affect any of the actual races themselves, and they could make anything they update only available in single player free roam and not in like the free roam lobbies you hang out with online when you're waiting for a match to start. Even more of a no-brainer, however, is actually allowing you to track where you've collected certain Peach medallions and P-switches. Again, the fact that the only thing you can actually see details for on the map, aside from the main number you've collected, is question mark panels is absolutely mind-boggling. This isn't even a major change like adding bosses would be, so I actually do think an update will eventually fix this. But basically, all they need to do is what they've already done in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Instead of telling us how many P-switches we've collected across the entire map, they should update the game to tell you more details for specific regions, like again, we're already getting with the question mark panels. Each area should be able to tell you how many medallions and P-switches you've collected. And then for each of those collectibles, once you've gotten them all for a certain track, a check mark appears next to it. It would also be nice to be able to see where you've collected items already by tossing up icons on the map, or once again, quoting from Breath of the Wild, receiving something like Hero Mode, which in Breath of the Wild basically records up to like your last 200 hours of gameplay and shows you exactly where you've been on the map within that time. This would be super useful in Mario Kart World because once again, once you have almost everything collected, there is no way to know where the final Peach medallions or P-switch missions are. That is kind of ridiculous. And being able to see where you've driven in free roam more recently would be a great way to let players kind of figure out for themselves where maybe the final collectibles are hiding. That is how I think Nintendo can fix free roam. Because again, this is one of the greatest modes I have ever played in not just any Mario Kart game, but literally any Nintendo game. I am having so much fun just driving around this world, which makes its shortcomings all the more aggravating because again, these are very simple fixes. Stuff like adding in new bosses or extra content on that end obviously would be a bit more of a lift from Nintendo's perspective, but a lot of the smaller fixes really should just be in the game already. Let me know what you guys think about free roam down in the comments below. Have you been having as much fun as I have, or are all these slight issues really hampering your experience with the game? I'm genuinely curious. Let me know down there. And if you want to get better at Mario Kart World, check out this video on screen to see my personal favorite expert level shortcut in every single track.